The Hall of Absence did not just lack light, it devoured it. The walls of black basalt drank every photon, leaving only the heavy, suffocating velvet of the dark. Empress Isora sat in the center of the void. To any observer, she would have been invisible, her matte black skin perfectly camouflaged against the throne, absorbing the spectrum so completely that she looked like a hole in reality. It is a known biological quirk that Morvendi eyes go fully white only when processing an emotion their species has no word for. A phenomenon that happens statistically once in a lifetime. Tonight, Isora's eyes were dim, two floating orbs in the crushed velvet of the room. She kept her collar high. The sleeves of her gown ended at her knuckles. Underneath the fabric, the shameful topography of her species mapped her skin. Ridges of slightly darker pigment, swirling like oil on water. Watermarks, imperfections. On the armrest, a small string instrument gathered dust. It hadn't sung since her coronation. She sat frozen, a statue of shadow, waiting for the rotation of the moon to end, the day she had spent entirely alone. Some secrets are kept not because they are dangerous, but because they are fragile. Stay with us. Then the service door hissed. Idris Okafor didn't look like a royal guest. He looked like a man who had been wrestling with a pressure valve for 6 hours. At 34, when he was broad in the shoulders, with grease already worked into the creases of his coveralls and a heavy-duty headlamp clipped to his collar, even when it was off. Idris checked the holographic work order hovering over his wrist. Coolant leak, Sector 7, throne proximity. He sighed, the sound loud in the cavernous room. He stepped onto the black marble, his boots squeaking. He didn't see the woman merge with the chair. He saw a pipe fitting behind the dais that was dripping synthesized coolant onto the sacred floor. He unhooked the heavy pipe wrench from his belt. His grip slipped on a patch of oil. The wrench hit sacred stone. The echo lasted longer than his dignity. Isora flinched. The movement was small, but against the stillness, it was an earthquake. Her sleeve rode up. Idris spun around, clicking his headlamp on. The beam cut through the dark like a physical lance. It hit the throne. It hit the floating eyes. A pipefitter had no business seeing the watermarks on an empress's skin, but his headlamp didn't know that. The LED beam was industrial strength, designed to find hairline fractures in durasteel. Instead, it found the ridges on her forearm. The light caught the topography. The matte black skin wasn't flat. It was a landscape of swirling, slightly glossy rivers that stood out against the light-absorbing mat. Isora froze. Her breath stopped in her throat. The silence she had cultivated for decades shattered under the weight of a single flashlight. "Who's there?" Idris asked, his voice rough. He should have run. He should have dropped to his knees. He didn't. He adjusted the angle of the light. He tilted his head, the beam sweeping sideways across her arm, illuminating the hidden texture. He wasn't looking at an empress. He was looking at a pattern. "Wait," he said. He took a step closer, the heavy boots thudding softly. "That's not a shadow." He reached out, his hand passing over the small instrument on the armrest, his knuckles brushing the strings as he aimed for the light. A faint, dissonant hum vibrated into the air. Isora's body went rigid, her biology locking down in a desperate attempt to become stone. The Hall of Absence held its breath. The headlamp sat between them on the throne step, still angled sideways, still catching the watermark ridges on her forearm. Neither moved. The light hummed. "Aha, you are not supposed to see these," she whispered. The sound was brittle, like dry leaves on stone. "To look is an intrusion, a violation." Idris didn't apologize. He didn't turn the light away. He shifted his weight, his boots making a grinding sound on the marble that felt impossibly loud. "Where I'm from," he said, his voice low and steady, "we call them birthmarks, or just skin." He reached out. His hand, calloused and scarred from years of gripping hot metal, hovered over her wrist. He didn't ask for permission. He just assumed she needed this as much as the pipe needed a seal. His index finger touched the largest mark, a branching pattern that ran from her wrist to her elbow like a river delta. He traced it, slowly, mapping the terrain of her shame. Sora stopped correcting herself when she thought his name. Her eyes went fully white, a brightness her species hasn't produced in 4 centuries. It happens once in a lifetime, usually at birth or death. And when a Morventhi processes an emotion their language has no word for. "Show me the rest," Idris said. She didn't tremble. She lowered the high collar of her gown. She rolled the sleeves past her elbows. The patterns were everywhere, swirling across her shoulders, down her spine, intricate and chaotic and undeniably hers. Idris traced them like they were circuit diagrams, his rough fingertips learning the gloss of the ridges against the matte of her skin. To the Hall of Absence's security log listed the entry as maintenance, pipe repair. The duration log was 4 hours. The pipe took 11 minutes. Izura reached out with her free hand and picked up the instrument from the armrest. It was light, almost hollow. She plucked a single string. The note hung in the air, a lonely, vibrating thing. Idris traced a line down her forearm at the exact same tempo. It wasn't a choice. It was already done. The next night, the service door hissed open again. The headlamp clicked on. She was already waiting, sleeves rolled up, the instrument in her lap. One note, one mark. In a room designed to absorb everything, the sound of them was the only thing that remained. "What secret are you keeping that just needs one person to see it?"